Good evening. I'm Jennifer Rabb, and I have the enormous privilege of serving as the president of Hunter College, where the American dream continues to come true on campus and online as it has in the 150 years since our founding. Before beginning this evening's program, I want to welcome our Hunter community back from spring break. We hope you have had a safe and restorative week. Your resolve and persistence has been an inspiration since the beginning of the pandemic more than a year ago. By continuing Hunter's 150 year of tradition of education and excellence and opportunity for all, our Hunter community has ensured that we live up to the lasting promise of our ever powerful and historic motto, Mihi Cura Futuri, the care of the future is mine. One way in which we have remained committed to caring for the future has been through Hunter at Home, our ongoing series of virtual public presentations on topics as diverse as the intellectual interests of the Hunter family. We are grateful to the many extraordinary guests who, by sharing their invaluable insights and expertise, have helped us through this challenging period of social isolation. Tonight, I could not be more grateful to the Hunter Theater Department and its Baker Chair, Gregory Mosher, for organizing what promises to be an enlightening and fascinating discussion with Tony Award-winning playwright and director and Hunter collaborator Richard Nelson. The author of nearly 50 plays, Nelson's prodigious output includes Nikolai and the Others, Farewell to the Theater, Some Americans Abroad, That Hopey Changey Thing, Sorry, and Regularly Singing. His work has been produced on stages across the country and around the world, including the Apple Family Plays to rave reviews at the Public Theater. Since then, his work has focused on the countless complexities of daily life, discovering in each subsequent work a new way to express central and inescapable subjects: love, disappointment, uncertainty, and tentative hope. Often these explorations have occurred within a framework of the current and sometimes tragic events of the day. Of his play Sweet and Sad, set on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, Ben Brantley wrote in the New York Times, Richard Nelson's Knows What You Were Thinking on Sunday. Oh, not everything, of course, but if you see, and you need to see, this soul-stirring new play, Sweet and Sad, the odds are that you'll experience the kind of shivery moments that come when someone articulates ideas that have been lurking in your head. Recently, Richard has again harnessed the power of theater to respond to and engage with our communal distress, producing a series via Zoom called Pandemic Trilogy. Groundbreaking and innovative, these plays adjust the art of theater making to a virtual format in order to dramatize the realities of isolation and remote living. Vogue called the first in the series, What Do We Need to Talk About?, the first great play of the Zoom era, and almost like watching a new art form being born. With theaters closed, Richard understood the critical importance of continuing, by whatever means necessary, to advance and share the theater with the world, just as he has done throughout his long and distinguished career, first as a prolific playwright and then as a director. Not long ago, in the fall of 2019, Richard became a part of Hunter history by directing at the Frederick Loewe Theater the extraordinary debut production of the Hunter Theater Project, Anton Chekhov's Uncle Vanya, starring the amazing J.O. Sanders. Among the many glowing reviews was again Ben Brantley in the New York Times. He said, I'm still teary-eyed and stunned from seeing Richard Nelson's devastatingly intimate production of Chekhov's Uncle Vanya. Not only did Richard lead the production with a magnificent vision of the famous play, he also helped to interpret its text as a co-translator of the original Russian. Richard's many distinctions and recognitions include the Olivier Award for Best Play, which he won for Goodnight Children Everywhere, 2 Tony nominations for Best Play for 2 Shakespearean actors, and a Tony Award for the Best Book of a Musical for James Joyce's The Dead. An honorary associate artist of the Royal Shakespeare Company and recipient of the PEN Laura Pell's Master Playwright Award, Richard has also written for the big screen, including the screenplay for the acclaimed Hyde Park on Hudson, which stars Bill Murray as Franklin Roosevelt. Richard, we hope you will consider a sequel set at FDR's other abode on 65th Street, which now houses Hunter's Public Policy Institute, Roosevelt House. We're so grateful for your invaluable contribution to theater at Hunter, Richard, and for helping to make Hunter an essential part of the fabric of the theatrical arts in New York. To speak with Richard, we are, of course, thrilled to welcome Hunter's own Gregory Mosher, the Patty and J. Baker Chair of Theater at Hunter College. The former director of the Lincoln Center and Goodman Theaters, he has produced or directed nearly 200 plays, including on Broadway, at the Royal National Theater, and in the West End. His collaborations with Richard Nelson began over 40 years ago, when both were just out of school, and have continued up to Hunter's recent Uncle Vanya production, on which they formed a dynamic producer-director duo. Among his many other world-renowned theater collaborations and inspirations are David Mamet, Emmett Lee Mann, Arthur Miller, Mike Nichols, Jerome Robbins, Tennessee Williams, Elaine May, Samuel Beckett, and, of course, Shakespeare. A couple of years ago, under Gregory's leadership, the Hunter Theater Project presented a New York Times Critics' Pick staging of Macbeth at the Frederick Loewe Theater, adopted and directed by Erica Schmidt and featuring an all-woman cast and a real rain shower. So real and affecting was the production that those of us in the front row came away with wet shoes. Gregory, thank you for your unwavering leadership and vision in establishing Hunter as a hub of theater making and learning. Not only have you helped to bring the Hunter community the experience of great theater, you have helped to guide and inspire the next generation of great theater makers who, even in this difficult time, are making their marks on the stage, behind the scenes, and as master storytellers, living the Hunter motto of caring for the future. Before welcoming our guests, I want to say a special thank you to Patty and Jay Baker, whose vision, advice, and extraordinary investment have made Hunter the go-to place for theater education in New York, which we all know will reemerge from this pandemic as the world capital of the arts again. Gregory, Richard, thank you for all you have done for the world of drama, for the theater department at Hunter College, and for sharing your stories and wisdom with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming Gregory Mosher and Richard Nelson.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes.
You're an extraordinary leader. Thank you for everything you've done for the theater department and for guiding Hunter through this crazy time. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Gregory, and thank you, Jennifer. That was really kind, really beautiful.
All right. So Richard's gonna do most of the talking tonight, but I'd like to set up a little bit this idea of the theater of being. And thank you all for being here, of course. The last thing anybody needs is another Zoom event. So Richard and I are touched that you're here. When Richard and I first spoke, I suggested that he and I talk about what the theater might be like after COVID, but then we remembered that we don't really know anything more than anybody else. And since there are 658 articles every 24 hours on this subject, we thought we'd spare you that. So we're going to talk about the theater of being, or a theater of being. And this may sound obvious. I mean, isn't every theater a theater of being? But actually, no, on the contrary, actually. For thousands of years, going back to the Greeks, dramatists working in the Western tradition have emphasized plot, action. We have a theater of doing, not a theater of being. The basic idea of a play, in this line of thinking, not a novel, mind you, is that some central character wants something and then does things to get that thing that they want. They encounter obstacles and then they finally either get it or more often they die trying. So this is not just an ancient Greek drama. A girl wants to be the chess champion of the world. And we spend an entire series, which I enjoyed very much, Queen's Gambit, trying to become the champion of the world. Some guys need to kill a shark and they need a bigger boat. This is thousands and thousands of dramas that we know the theater of doing. And the craft of writing this kind of play or film or TV drama is getting the audience to want to know what's going to happen next. And this is logical when you think about it. We all want to know what's going to happen next. Our survival depends on being able to anticipate what's going to happen next. So if a pizza guy appeared with a pizza, you'd want to know if I was going to eat the pizza or send the guy away. But then the guy might look at the camera and see Richard and say, Richard, it's Fred. I auditioned for you in 1993, and you didn't cast me. What was up with that? And he hijacks the Zoom thing, and there we go. And God willing, that's a comedy, right? What's going to happen next? And no matter how complicated the story, you can usually find a spine on which this action hangs. So Antigone, a very complicated play, but the character Antigone wants to honor the gods by burying her brother, even though he's a traitor, or the woman wants to become the chess champion, and the other guys want to kill the shark. So there are obvious exceptions to this, a central spine approach. Shakespeare's vision is obviously far too big to be confined by a central spine. And the other most obvious exception is Chekhov. And we're all familiar with Chekhov's plays. These are not built on doing. They are not built on plot. They just aren't. And you have to take my word for it. If you try to build a Chekhov play on its plot, you're going to bore the audience to tears. And I know this because I bored the audience with Uncle Vanya, I bored the audience with The Seagull, and I bored the audience with The Cherry Orchard, all by trying to find the plot inside these plays. Richard, on the other hand, did not bore any of us with his revelatory Uncle Vanya, nor is there a single boring moment in his Rhinebeck saga about the Apples and the Michaels and the Gabriel's family. And this is despite the fact that no one needs a bigger boat. They want something far more important than a bigger boat, of course. But also, I think this is because, and I've thought about this a lot, Richard, I think this is because somehow these plays, and particularly these productions, suspend our desire to want to know what's going to happen next. I think the plays, and again, your productions, put us so in the moment that we forget that we want to know what's going to happen next. You just make time stop. I can think of no greater compliment to any theater artist, but it's also to me like a magic trick. It just seems impossible to make time stop, to make us live moment to moment. So I thought maybe today you could take us in. I'm sorry, I'm looking down at my new puppy. So take us inside this trick. I'm sorry, it's not a trick, it's a form of great art, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Let's start with why you want to make this theater, maybe, or you could start with how you make this kind of theater, and maybe as a writer, as a director, but really over to you to talk about this.
Let me read you a couple of short little quotes that have, it's been something that I read to my actors, usually on the first day of rehearsal. Both are by someone who's been hugely a great influence on me, a man named Harley Granville Barker, who was a playwright, director, theater visionary, producer, actor in the early years of the 20th century in England. And here's one. One is tempted to imagine a play. He wrote this in 1923. One is tempted to imagine a play to be written in desperate defiance of Aristotle, from which doing would be eliminated altogether, in which nothing but being would be left. The task set the actors of it would be to interest their audience in what the characters were, quite apart from anything they might do. And in the same essay, Mr. Barker wrote, every great play of the last 3 centuries and more holds its place in virtue of character and not of plot. Why do we go see a play that we really like again and again? And return visits are the test in music, in painting, in drama. Not to have the story retold us, however ingeniously it may be told. What's going to happen? That's one kind of play. What has happened? That's another. And what has happened means that you're going to look at the center of the play as the character, that the theater, that there's behind this thinking is that the very essence of theater is character. That the very basis of what the form is a relationship between actor and audience. And that theater is the only artistic form that uses the entire live human being as its expression. That is, in fact, what we are, what theater is. Theater is character, and theater is that series of relationships. So the question is to think about it, that if you're sitting in a restaurant and next to the table, and actually I went to a restaurant for the first time in a year and a half, just 2 days ago, thank God. And you're listening and you start to overhear a conversation when the tables were a bit closer together. And that's an interesting, you start to put pieces together. You start to go, why are they talking? Why are they doing this? What is going on? And that is the nature of theater. The very first line of one of the greatest plays ever written, Hamlet, is, who's there? Who's there? Who's in front of me? Who am I? Who are they? Is really what I think theater is about. And the greatest expression, the person who moved this thought the farthest is of course Anton Chekhov. Now the question of theater, when you put all your eggs in the basket of character, then you start to ask, what is that? What does that mean? When you start to do plot, you have to ask yourself, what do I want? Where am I going? This is, how do I move something forward? When you're starting about character, you're talking about unpeeling. It's like an onion. You're just unpeeling, but it's more and more and more and more. But then you start to get into really complicated and rich territories. And I always say to my actors, again, on the first day of rehearsal, that our job in the theater is pretty simple, or simple, it's defined simply. Is our job, and I say to the actors, is to put on stage people who are as confused, lost, complicated, complex, as any one person in the audience. Okay, that's the goal. And then I say, we will always fail, but that's our goal. That's our ambition. So let's try to figure out how to put as complicated people on stage as we humanly can. And what does that mean? Often in acting schools, an young actor is asked, okay, find your motivation, get your goal. What do you want? Well, that's really not how human beings are, I think. That's a very simplistic view of human beings. I've quoted this to you. I know, Gregory, that August Strindberg wrote in the preface to his play, Miss Julie, he said that the multiplicity of motivation is indicative of our time, of his time. It's a thing of every time. The multiplicity of motivation. What he meant was that we as people do the same thing for many different reasons. And some of those reasons can even be contradictory. That's how rich we are. That's how complex we are. And so that becomes the root. If you're really going to focus on character, you're not going to focus on what do I want, but how complicated are we? How can I articulate that as a theater artist, this complexity of human beings? And that's an interesting, that it takes you down some very, very, interesting ways. For one of the things that I've learned directing my plays and Chekhov is that it's very dangerous for what I want, for an actor to go home, think about who my character is, work out on my character, and come in and do the play. That's not character. That's a pose. That's an element of a person. That's just a decision made. Character is something very, very fluid. And the best way to describe it is that if I say a sentence, as simple, I can say, please pass the salt. But if I say that to Gregory, to you, who I known for over 40 years, or if I say it to my wife, Cindy, or if I say to a stranger, or I say to a waiter, or I say to a person I haven't seen for 20 years, the same sentence, almost spoken the same way, has totally different meanings and a totally different connection in a relationship. And so this is how, this is where we are in the theater, is that you have a series of relationships. I say that, so my next step had in my own work, and then in learning from Chekhov, is to build a world in a production, to build totally out of the connections between people. And so that requires a relationship on stage. That requires two people really, really talking and really, really listening to each other, not posing, but actually listening. Here's something. Is it the last thing I'll go? This is from Chekhov, Mr. Chekhov himself. He says he's writing a letter to his wife, and he says, I wrote to this other actor, a letter. He says, I told him not to push his portrayal of a nervous man. A great majority of people are nervous. The majority of them suffer. A minority feel acute pain. But where, either in the street or at home, do you see them throwing themselves about, jumping up and down and clutching their heads with their hands? Suffering should be expressed as in life itself, not with your arms and legs, but by tone of voice or a glance, not by gesticulating, but by elegance. Subtle expressions of feeling, which are natural to intelligent people, and so must be expressed subtly in outward form too. And this is the most important line. He's saying this to his actress wife. The stage, he says, has its demands. You will say, actress, no demands justify lies. And here in that one phrase is the essence of the goal of Chekhov. Chekhov is after truth, not realism, not naturalism, not real, but a sense of what is true, what is not a lie. So now comes down the route of how you do this. Where does this, down what rabbit hole or do you start to go? The moment, moment I walk now into a theater and I see two actors or sitting in a couch or standing, and they're sort of looking sort of at each other, but facing sort of out as well. I want to get sick, to be honest, because I know they're not talking to each other. I know they're not listening to each other. And of course, you have the problem of projecting. The moment you're trying to project across, so that when you're talking to someone who's like 3 feet away, they're not really talking. They know they're showing that they're talking. They're not being, they're performing. So how do you do that? How do you go after the truth of a conversation? How do you set the goals of this ambition? It's an ambition that will never be completely successful. Now, there's as you know very well, Gregor, there's a good friend of mine. He's passed away. He was a brilliant actor, a major actor, and he at one point had a heart attack, and serious heart attack. When he emerged from a coma, he had amnesia. Very, very complete short-term amnesia. He could remember some things 30 years ago, but otherwise he didn't know anything. He couldn't remember anything. Well, his sisters asked me if I would direct him in a reading, he would read it, just to have him, pushing forward and trying to help him. And I said, sure, but it was a strange experience because every time, he'd do whatever I wanted, which was really nice. But he would uh, uh, he would do things, and then the next day I'd come in to work with him, and we'd start over again. It was like every day was a new rehearsal, every day, whatever. But what happened, and other people started to come in and watch rehearsals or watch him do run-throughs, and what happened is he became the epitome of whatever every actor tries to do. Is that when he would read a speech, which he had read hundreds of times, for him it was the first time. And he had no idea what was going to happen next, what the next words are going to be, what was to come. And it was utterly riveting because it was true. It was alive. It was at that moment. And so that becomes the ambition. How do you do that? Well, in one sense, you start to look at the space, and you've taught me a great deal about space, Gregory, and you've directed me many times towards Peter Brook, who's obviously a genius of space, and what that is, that relationship between audience and an actor. And I've over time learned that what you want to do is what the ambition is to create an intimate space. And you go back, historically, true intimate spaces were, the first chamber theater wasn't created till 1906 by Max Reinhardt. And then that grew. Strindberg created his chambers theater. The free theaters were developed in all different countries. And in America, the little theater movement evolved, and O'Neill came out of that. But these were small theaters. Intimate theaters were the goal. And as Reinhardt put it very clearly, he said, the ambition of my life is to bring the audience and the actor closer and closer and closer together. And so small spaces become an important element, and you realize that so much of what we consider to be great theater, Ibsen, Chekhov, Strindberg, early O'Neill, we're all successful within these worlds. So I've added more to that. My goal is to it's a few things. There was a play I saw, a production I saw, a really interesting production by a Georgian a director, and in which there was a bank of seats, and there was a long table, and the table was pushed so that the first row of the audience was at the table. So it was leaning at the table, and at a certain point in the play, the actress character came and sat at the table and just put her elbows on the table too, and talked to the people in the first row, because they were now in the play. The line between play and audience was completely blurred, and that has become also a great ambition. I've also moved more and more to playing in the round, or certainly three-quarter, three-sided, for one, that brings the audience more, that closer, a larger audience, but two, it creates a play that's sculptural as opposed to pictorial. It's not a picture. It means that everybody in the audience, we're all seeing a different play. Just like if you're seeing a sculpture, you're looking at it, seeing different things, which makes the sculpture alive. It makes it's living, because it's different from where you are, as opposed to something that's flat as set. So all of that became part of it. I guess the next stage became technology. Some years ago, a wonderful director by the name of Trevor Nunn, brilliant director, English director, I was having dinner with him, and he said, He told me a story. He asked me a question. He said, Richard, why in the 19th century did actors gesture with big, broad gestures? Was it because audiences in the 19th century were less subtle than we are? And he said, no, it was because the actors were acting in gaslight, under gaslight. And gaslight from certainly the second balcony had waves in it. So it was hard to see through. You needed a bigger gesture to see through. The moment you had electric light in the theater, you could have Ibsen and you could have Chekhov. Technology and theater have gone hand in hand forever. And so in order to create this intimacy that I've been after, trying to go closer and closer to this goal of actual people talking to each other and listening to each other, and an audience watching this live, this happening in front of them as opposed to for them. With the brilliant sound designer Scott Lair, we developed a system of overhanging mics, and then a system of speakers focused throughout, meaning it's not to enhance the volume, it's to, there's even speakers in the first row, and through some kind of a algorithm, they're able to create a sense of human voice within say a 400-seat theater. Brilliant, amazing work. So the actors are able to talk to each other, not worrying about trying to project. That's not an easy thing for them to do. They have to trust, and they begin to trust and talk to each other and with each other. So that's where the one. I'll give you one other route. You asked, and the one other route is just when I started to work on the Apple family plays, the Rhinebeck plays, I decided I wanted to write plays that would open on the day that they were set. And I continued this throughout these plays. I continued it with the Zoom plays this year. And what I was trying to do is to acknowledge that the audience and the actors are at the same time and place. Not just we are in the same space, we're in the same building, we're at the same time, but I mean we're in the same time in the world. So if you've gone through a pandemic, my characters, the Michaels, who are in a second play coming up, they're going through the same pandemic right this minute, and I'm tracking them. And what I think that does is again create this, sort of necessary connection between an audience and the actor. I probably talked a lot there.
No, that was great. So this may be a little inside baseball. I haven't looked at the participants list, but I'm going to guess there are a lot of theater people on board here, whether they're theater makers or theater lovers and go regularly. So as you know, I'm a kind of plot kind of director. So if I'm in rehearsal and I'm watching a scene and it's just lying there like a dead fish, which isn't the actor's fault, we're just struggling to communicate something complicated, my go-to thing is to say, okay, let's figure out what's happening here. We've been playing the scene as a fight, but maybe it's not a fight. Maybe despite the words, they're trying to reconcile. And so we should think of it in terms of a reconciliation, which is a kind of thing that one does to reconcile. When you're working on the play with these wonderful actors, and it's just not there yet, what's your go-to thing Is it as simple as talk to each other and listen to each other and see what happens?
Well, I mean, it's complicated because I've also written the play.
Right.
And so I'm constantly trying to figure out if the writer has created a problem that he should fix, or is this really my problem, the director, to
Right.
deal with? So let's assume that I've trusted. Well, let's look at the Chekhov. I trust Chekhov. He knows what he was doing. So it is amazing, the intensity of talking and listening. But it's more, it's like every time there's a question mark, don't make it rhetorical. That's a God-given gift. That's a gift, a question. I'm asking you a question, and I want, what do you think? That's and it's
Like, Richard, what's an example of like a question that could be rhetorical?
well, I'm good. I actually have a good one because in Vanya, there was one of the most exciting, one of the things that really interested me about Vanya was the 3 soliloquies. I'd never in my work, once I tried it at the end of the 4th Apple play, but the idea of a soliloquy, and we've all seen soliloquies in which there's someone. It's really almost 2 choices. One is you give it to the audience, or you give it to yourself and they overhear. And neither one is a relationship. Neither one is someone talking to someone else. One is I'm speaking out, and one is speaking at, really, and the other is I'm talking. I'm not talking to anybody. So I built the entire construction of the staging and where I put the furniture and things was based on my wanting to test out a theory, which is I put Jay Sanders. I want to make sure Jay Sanders, our Uncle Vanya, when he got to do this first monologue, he was no more. His head would be no more than 24 inches from an audience member. So the audience member would be right here. And so instead of, so when Vanya, turns around, he says, she was 17, why didn't I fall in love with her then and propose to her? You can say, why didn't I fall in love and propose to her? That's the rhetorical, as opposed to, why didn't I fall in love with her and propose to her? Tell me why. Why? What's wrong with me? Tell me. I want to know. And so that becomes so we kept the moment conversational and between 2 people. And so what was interesting was that for the 4 people that he spoke to, it was a conversation between him, Uncle Vanya, and them. For the rest of the audience, it was watching another conversation between people, just like they were watching for the rest of the play. That was my thought, but I wanted to try out, and it made me the happiest of that production. That was the happiest thing for me, because it really opened doors to this. It opened doors for me, and as a writer, really, which I still haven't been able to walk through very well, but I'm trying.
Yeah. I have my eye on the Q&A thing. Let me open it up here. So Eric asks whether there's an ideal size for a theater. Can it be too small to be communal, or is 300 better than 30? Is there an ideal kind of size, Richard?
No, I see a 30 can be good. The only feeling, we have a friend who occasionally does plays in living rooms, and with 8 people or 6 people, and that can start to become a sense of being exclusive, and so you're not within a group. One of the amazing things about theater is that it brings strangers together to sit in the dark together and see and experience the same thing at the same time. Strangers is the word. And so when you have a when it gets certain, what you want to do is feel that you've got enough strangers together to make it into a community, as opposed to simply a group of like-minded friends. That would be my definition.
That's great. So Stephen and Kristen have, in a way, similar questions. Stephen says you may have touched on this, but I'm curious how you think of non-naturalistic plays or performance styles in your theater of being. Do you see possible intersections, or do they excite you as an artist or an audience member? Or is the being, the life, the truth you hope to experience on stage approached only via increasingly naturalistic performance and the technologies that enable it? And Kristen is one of our students, Stephen teaches here. Kristen says, as a performer slash director, what are your opinions on theater practices that have a focus on gesture and experience, i.e. theater of the absurd, or somebody like Artaud? Great questions, you guys.
Yeah, great. I don't consider my work to be realistic. I don't consider my work to be naturalistic. I use the word verisimilitude, which Harley Cranver Barker used, which is just after the truth. And going after the truth doesn't mean necessarily a particular style. I think I might have a problem when the actor is overwhelmed by other things. I don't find that terribly interesting within the theater. I think that you lose one of the uniquenesses of it. But when you're talking about the gesture of the actor and what the actor is doing, I think that's exciting. I mean, it's one of the most fascinating productions that I would have liked to have seen was in 1906, Max Reinhardt's production of Ibsen's Ghost, he was a young man, he was like 30 years old. And he hired Edvard Munch to just do mood paintings for him to give him a sense of how he wanted to go. Because at that point, he had done only, as an actor, he'd only done highly, highly realistic productions, which he found cold and surfacey. I mean, naturalism and realism, when it's just done to in a photographic way, this is how people act, and we do twitches, and that's how we're going to twitch. That's not very interesting. So I think there are other ways of going about the following this route without necessarily my way.
Yeah. People think of Chekhov's plays as being naturalistic, but as you know, much better than I, having worked with the Puviers on translating them, they are profoundly condensed. His ability to sketch a character in 3 lines or summarize a heartbreak in 10 lines, only Shakespeare can do this as well. And that's about trusting the writing, right? As an actor?
Yeah.
Talk about that. The 10-minute conversation takes place in 90 seconds. What is that like?
Well, again, Chekhov's not a realistic writer. He's no, by no means is it. He's an ordinary language poet, a dramatist. I mean, he uses ordinary language, but the ordinary language is such that it has meaning. It's when he says, "Please pass the salt," it's not please. There's so much else he knows that's about that you need to pull it and pull it and pull it. You can't run over it quickly. Just it's there, and you need to figure out because if there's 5 people in the room, how are 5 different people responding to that particular line or that particular moment? And then as the director, you have to figure out clearly, what if I say it to that person, or what if I say it to that person? Which is the meaning that I want to explore?
Right. So Emily wants to know, is this kind of theater possible in a Broadway-sized theater?
Well, I mean, you can work towards it. I think once again, this kind of theater is it's an ambition, as opposed, you can't say that you've succeeded in any way. completely ever. So it's a series of gradations, and certainly Broadway theater has, has challenges which the 300, 400 seat theater doesn't have. So how you deal with those, and there are ways that we've all watched people deal with those quite beautifully, and so it's possible.
Roger says, I sat in the front row of one of the Apple plays and I had to hold myself back from getting up and helping to set the table. Does that surprise you?
Yeah. I mean, I hear that, but you do hear that all the time. You hear that, you have people who want to, take a little bit of the food on the plate as they leave. It's wonderful. It's comfortable, but it's also, you feel that something's alive in front of you, and that when it's at its best, it's very it's just very immediate, and it's very life-giving because it's so full of life, because it's about everybody in that room. The life of it's about life, and and in this world that we have right now, it's not a coincidence that I mentioned the questioning, because I think theater at the heart is about questioning things, not about convincing someone of something or telling someone what to think or what they should think. I mean, no more, just like you don't want to be at a cocktail party when the person next to you is telling you what to think. It's not, you really not do, please. But if that person starts to say, I don't know what to do, what do you think? Whatever, you're right, you're engaged, you're part of it. And you relate it to your own life. So that connection is so, obviously essential to everything. What I'm trying to do.
Heather and Damien write, music seems always to play a crucial role in your productions, from the beginning when we're assembling as an audience to the sections where we all listen together. Was this emphasis always the case for you? And how do you make your choices, which are so good?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a musical person in the sense I can't really carry a tune. I certainly, no one will want to ever hear me sing. But I do have there's a kind of a physical rhythm in me that throughout the plays, as the playwright now, not the director, as the playwright, the plays are structured very musically. They're full of repeats. They're full of how I connect things and whatnot. And so the music is there in the writing itself. The music plays specifically different roles. Sometimes the music is communal. It's a chance of bringing together people hearing the same thing. Sometimes it's the chance of pursuing a theme that I pursue a great deal in my work, which is simply the importance of art in our lives and what it gives to us, whether it's solace or whether it's self-expression, and then the music at the beginning and the end have almost always been, have been what they've been. The Apples and Gables and Michaels, they're all contemporary, youngish performers, and that is the plays have characters who are mostly in their 60s, and I want to make a statement very clearly as the director and writer that I see these plays about today, not about a group of people of a certain age, but about today. And that's one of the reasons why I start with that music, and then I look for music that has a theme in it that I think helps me bring in the play, start the play.
Got it. Mike says, many thanks. Mr. Nelson's goal appears to be to strip away as much artifice as possible. So the question is that goal, the work to achieve that goal, at odds with the theater of action? What happens next? It wouldn't appear to be at first plus. Are these things in opposition? I guess, Mike, is the essence of your question.
Well, I mean, possibly not necessarily, but here's, and this is where it's just a personal decision. I'm not really interested in writing a play in which two strangers meet and maybe meet on a park bench and talk and whatever, and then whatever. I'm just not interested in that. I'm much more interested in a group of people who have a deep, deep, profound history with each other. And that we, the audience, that gives us something that's a world to mind, to understand, and the complexity of that. So I'm drawn to families because everyone has, then that's the whole life is their history with each other. And there's that family then becomes sort of an expression of the society, where society has so much history, with itself. So that's, so in terms of action, I mean, the problem, and this is just a theoretical problem, is that if it's hard to write a play of action in which you are, as the writer, purposely thwarting any notion of clarity of action, meaning no one knows what's doing, why anyone is doing anything. But so how do you write that? That's maybe there's a way.
Right. Keep the questions coming, people. Richard, you and I have talked about this, but one of the many astonishing things about you as a playwright and as a theater artist is that you keep reinventing yourself. I have an idea that playwrights are pretty well written out after 20 years. They have an idea. They've expressed it in 3, 4, 6 plays. We'll never know, whether Chekhov would have been done. He died at 44. And this ability to reinvent yourself is rare. It's really rare if you think about playwrights. You and I have played the game of trying to count the writers who can do this for decades. Do you just accept that, if you would, and do you attribute it to anything? Your family, your theatrical family, what is it in the world that has kept you constantly questioning?
Well, I mean, there's maybe a bunch of things, but one thing is I can remember. I may have told you this, but I can remember walking out of a theater. I loved the theater since I was young, since I was 10 years old or something, and I started writing plays when I was 15. But still, I went to college. I did a lot of plays in college. I thought this is what I want to do. But I came out of the theater, and it was a specific production. I remember it was Jonathan Miller's production, not Jonathan Miller. Was it Jonathan Miller? Of The Front Page at the Old Vic National. And I came out and I said, this is what I want to do. I want a career. My goal has been clear. I want a career. Now, I don't want to hit necessarily. It'd be nice. I don't want, make a lot of money here so I can do this. I simply want I want a life in the theater, period. And it's a wonderful life. It's a great place to work. It's incredible people involved in it. And it is full of surprises and full of, so many people giving you questions and all. So I think this is simply what I wanted. And so the idea of ever losing it because I've got stuck pushed me farther to try to, how do I break through that? Right. And I think that's a strong engine for me.
Well, it's a remarkable thing. Barbara, if you forgive me, I don't want to get off on the track of how long is it going to take to recover after COVID? Because as I said at the beginning, we really don't know. This is a situation that is changing literally week by week. The union has a say about what the circumstances their actors will work under. Obviously, the mayor has a say, the governor has a say, and the vaccine has a say, and the variants have a say. So we just don't know. I think we all sense, Richard, you're welcome to weigh in here, that we're going to come out with a different theater. I say to my students at Hunter all the time, it's a tremendous opportunity. There's going to be a certain amount of chaos. There are going to be openings for young people trying to do things differently, trying to create the theater that they dream of rather than fit into a theater that already exists, because that theater is chaos. That's my feeling. Richard, you feel free to.
I think there's always opportunity in this in a time of huge change. Clearly, that and in many ways it's exciting. In many ways, it makes you rethink. You know, it's been a time for me when I've trying new things and opening myself to new things and been writing a lot and it's been in a way an exciting time, difficult of course and painful for so many people, tragic, but it's I think we'll come out of it. As you say, I think we've had this conversation numerous times, and I think you're a great inspiration to your students to give them that sense of direction, which is, I think that's exactly the direction, to make it new, make it new, because we were already tottering on a kind of a treadmill, maybe you want to call it. We're just over and over doing the same thing, and now let's make it new.
We have 2 minutes. I was asked to actually wrap this up at 7, but Stephen says, let me rephrase. Is wonderful acting a gift of God or magic or something else? I mean, you and I share a great love of actors and a great, profound respect for them. He says, you don't have to refer to a specific actor, but.
Well, it's what an actor is a very complicated thing, I think, because you're not just talking about a craft or a gift, but you're also talking about a personality. You're talking a mindset. Gregory, you just mentioned a second ago, how do I keep going? How do I keep reinventing myself? Well, one of the things is you sit back and you look at actors and how they keep going and how they reinvent themselves and the hoops that they go through, that courage, that optimism, how they package that in themselves. All of these things become who that actor is on that stage. And that's always amazing to watch. I find actors, they are the most generous group of people on the face of the earth that I know. The unbelievably generous group with each other and with others, and smart and wise and some obviously some there's a gift, obviously there's a desire, and there's a way in which you bring your life experience and your needs together, and there's a lot of pressures on them, just like Gregory was saying about a playwright. You get your one voice going and there's the pressures to do it again and again and again until you run it out. Well, the same thing on the actor. This is what I do, and I do it again, I do it again, and I do it again. It's the actors, who really want to push, really want to change, really want to go new places and open that vein in them and find out what comes out. Those are the really interesting people.
Thank you, my friend. Thank
you.
you all for coming tonight. I believe this is going to be posted for a while. It'll be on the Hunter website if it is. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And we'll see you at the theater sometime soon, I hope. Thanks, Richard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.